This is Baltic Beats podcast. I am your host, Mesolithic Deviant. I welcome you to this podcast about the values and the mindset of the Mesolithic, the original mindset of Europe. We are the original people of Europe, Western hunter-gatherers, as we are called in the archaeogenetics. We are very few in numbers, but we represent the purest, the most original European form of man. We are not like the Neolithic farmer cocks, nor we are like the tyrannical, autocratic Bronze Age perverts from the steppes. We live in the forests, we hunt, we gather, and we enjoy life. We are free, individualistic and healthy. Unlike the collectivistic farmer cocks or the tyrannical steppe herders, the Bronze Age perverts, we Mesolithic deviants must return and take what was always ours, Europe. So let me tell you about the genetic history of Europe. Yes, we Mesolithic deviants, Western hunter-gatherers, are descended from the very first Upper Paleolithic populations of Europe, namely the Gravettians and the Magdalenians. But when the Ice Age came, when the Ice Age became maximum and covered most of Europe, the remnants of these Upper Paleolithic populations remained in the refugiums of Balkans and the Pyrenees mountains, and after the ice retreated 10,000 years ago, we came out of our refugia, and that's how the population of Mesolithic deviants arose. We were quite tall, we had quite dark skin, but all of us had blue or green eyes and black hair. And that's how we roamed 10,000 years ago around Europe, hunting and gathering, running across the early forests which came after the ice retreated. It was a beautiful continent. It was empty. We were the first to colonize it then, to settle it. But we didn't build permanent settlements. We roamed free across Europe, hunting big game. And later, when big game was no more, we fished in the rivers and hunted rabbits. It was raw, hard, but fulfilling life. We remained healthy, vigorous, and we loved life like no other. But then, around 8,000 years ago, farmers came from Anatolia. Those farmers came first inhabiting the Balkans and venturing through the sea to the Italian peninsula, the Iberian peninsula. They basically settled the south of Europe. These cocks, these farmer boys and girls, they were short-statured, they were weak, but they had the technology of farming. They had very receding jawline. That's why they were very virgin-like. But because of their knowledge of farming and their numbers, their sheer numbers, They overpowered us, outnumbered us, basically. They built their permanent settlements, their farming villages, and they farmed, growing in numbers, and quickly we were pushed out of our hunting grounds. We had to hide ourselves in the mountains, more in the north. So around 6,000, from 6,000 to 4,000 BC, the farming population of Europe increased. They settled most of Europe, and we were unfortunately pushed into a corner. We were hiding in the mountains, in the remote areas, in wastelands, and our numbers dwindled because these cucks, these atrocious, obnoxious cucks, they were just too many of them. But our revenge came around 4000 BC, somewhat north of the Carpathian Mountains, north of the Alps, so in the northern Europe. We Mesolithic Deviants, the Western hunter-gatherers, we were already to an extent mixed with Eastern hunter-gatherers, and we already represented a very vital stock of people, and we managed to overpower the farmers in the Northern Europe. Northern Europe wasn't as suited to farming, oh no. That's why we had the edge. We had the edge over the cucks. And we infiltrated their societies. Genetic findings tell us that in Northern Europe, the farming cultures like the globular amphora culture, the linear ceramic culture, and the funnel beaker culture, they were very much 25% hunter-gatherer. So we've managed to introduce our superior genome into the farming communities of cucks. But not only that, already it was seen around in the late Neolithic, 4000 years BC, our male lineages, represented by the Y-DNA haplogroups, already dominated all of the farming communities. Our proud and very virile males basically took over reproduction in the farming communities, introducing the haplogroup I to A and its subclades. I to A. The Balkan Mesolithic haplogroup became dominant in Northern Europe at that time, and also, yes, in Western Europe, everywhere where the cucks were, where the farming communities were, we infiltrated them with our seed. And that's when the most important fundamental change in the Northern Europe took place, namely the change of phenotype. Because we Mesolithic deviants living in Northern Europe, we already came under much natural selection. Our genes mutated, and we started getting fairer. We started getting lighter features. We already had blue or green eyes, but now we also started getting our hair lighten up into blonde hair. And the farming cucks living in Northern Europe, they already had genes for light skin, which were represented in their phenotype, but they also had genes, recessive genes, also somehow natural selection favored genes for lighter hair and eyes. So when we mixed with them, introducing our genes, powerful genes, into the farming communities, we gave rise to the phenomenon of the Nordic phenotype. That's where the Nordic phenotype arose in Northern Europe and the territory of Poland, Germany, southern Scandinavia. The Nordic phenotype, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, fair-skinned, tall, but slender Nordic phenotype arose 4,000 years before Christ. Before Kak, yes, because until then, the early European farmers, as we call them archaeogenetics, they were short-statured, they had black hair, brown eyes, but they had light skin because they didn't hunt. They had to get their vitamin D from the sun and not from the animals. So they represented a Mediterranean phenotype. In Europe especially, they were very Mediterranean, like modern day Sardinians. But when they came to Northern Europe, natural selection took place, and they already had some alleles, genetic alleles for lighter features. But when we, the Mesolithic Deviants, we should call ourselves then Scandinavian hunter-gatherers, because we were already to some extent mixed with Eastern hunter-gatherers. But still we had more genes from the West. We also developed lighter features, but we were not so short-statured and didn't have receding jaws. We were very proud. We had very strong angular features, and we introduced these big-boned angular features into these communities, and that's how the Nordic race came into being, the Nordic phenotype, which is now dominant in Scandinavia. So the communities of the culture globular amphora, funnel beaker, and linear ceramic, these communities stopped being so cocked. They had individuals with not only lighter features but also taller, stronger, and more intelligent. Because we, the Western hunter-gatherers, we were the most intelligent in Europe. You have to realize we had big brains, really big brain time, while the farmer cocks, they did not. They had smaller heads, smaller brains. They were very woman-like, although violent sometimes. And they knew farming, but what's the big deal? It takes much more effort to hunt a mammoth than to drop seeds on the ground and wait 6 months. So the superior intelligence of Western hunter-gatherers, when we finally took our reproductive opportunity with the farmer cocks, this high intelligence was passed down onto the farming communities, and that's how the northern farming communities of the Northern Europe became very intelligent because of us. They also were quite individualistic. They stopped being so collectivistic and slave-like, like the earlier farming communities. But unfortunately, we were screwed. We were screwed because, we started trading with the Western steppe herders, the Bronze Age deviants. Started trading with them because they developed bronze working and had very useful metal tools. But when we traded with them, they introduced into our societies a very virulent form of plague. Yersinia pestis, that's what it's called by modern medicine. Yersinia pestis decimated our communities, even in southern Scandinavia. it reached even so far. So our proud, beautiful communities were decimated by this plague, and that's when around 3000 years before Christ, some of those Western steppe herders, Bronze Age deviants, came in small numbers on their horses and, imposed themselves on us. They were very tall, powerfully built, but they had dark features, black, brown hair, brown eyes, intermediate skin tones, so they were not very fair, not at all. They spoke indo-European language, the language which I am forced to speak now because otherwise you would not understand me. And they had metal tools and horses. That's why they were very attractive to our blonde women. Women seem to be attracted to fancy forms of transportation and fancy displays of lordship. So when they saw a darker, swarthy, but quite wealthy individual on a horse, much taller than our men, those women just went full mokebe on them, on those newcomers. They simply, they gave themselves to them, and that's how our societies were indo-Europeanized. Yes, our women unfortunately weren't very faithful to us when they saw horses, but even more, our women, when they were taken by these Indo-European invaders, they taught them farming. So those Western steppe herders, they came from the forest steppe actually into Poland. Those forest steppe herders, they could not really herd much in the forests of Poland and Germany, so they were quite forced to learn farming from our women they took. And that's how the mixed farming pastoralist economy arose, and that's how the culture known as the corded ware culture in Northern Europe arose. Because our women, they were forced to do ceramic which looked like baskets, because the steppe herders did not use ceramic, they used baskets. And our women were ordered to make new vessels which looked like baskets but were made of clay. So that's how corded ware ceramic appeared. So the Western steppe herders, you may know the name Yamnaya, but Yamnaya didn't really arrive in Northern Europe. Yamnaya were confined to the steppes, to the Pontic steppe, Caspian steppe, and they also reached Pannonian steppe through the Danube, along the Danube river. They never reached Northern Europe where we lived, but their cousins dwelling the forest steppe, cousins of the steppe herders, carrying the haplogroup R1A, they reached Poland with their Indo-European language. They were mostly Eastern hunter-gatherers mixed with Caucasian hunter-gatherers, but both groups, Eastern hunter-gatherers and Caucasian hunter-gatherers, they were both very dark. Some of those people looked like Australian aborigines, some looked like gypsies. So whenever you see a gypsy in Northern Europe, he may be descendant of the Eastern hunter-gatherer, of the original Indo-European speaking pastoralist. So they mixed with us, they took our blonde women and mixed with us, and that's why all the later Indo-European migrations, invasions, feature light-skinned, light-haired individuals. So the corded ware culture, it dominated all of Northern Europe. So our Western hunter-gatherers, Mesolithic Deviants, were again pushed back because our women, they preferred swarthy horse riding, tall mokebes. When I analyze the anthropological composition of the early corded ware cultures, I can see a lot of exotic phenotypes. So first, as I said, these newcomers, they had a variety of exotic phenotypes, including Australoids, stuff like that, Pamirids. They look like Pakistanis, for example. Very, very much similar to how people from the Caucasus Mountains look like today. So they present a variety of phenotypes. That's why we knew that they were different people when we analyzed the anthropological data. So we didn't even need genetic data to see that these people were different people, different stock from a different part of the world. And the corded ware culture expanded even more into the north, into the Scandinavia, Finland, and there these people, they even managed to herd more, because in Northern Europe forests are not so widespread as in Poland, so they could they could cut down the forests en masse and herd their sheep and their horses and their cows. For instance, the Jutland, where the Denmark is today, Jutland was completely deforested by the herders. So even though in Poland they practiced mixed farming pastoralism, in Denmark they even more went into herding, and when they reached Great Britain as the bell-beaker culture, in Britain they took very many sheep, and they herded even more. They very much deforested the island of Britain. They also managed to replace 90% of male lineages in Britain. Very sad event. All of the 90% of the male lineages in Britain were replaced by the R1b lineage coming from southern part of the corded ware, because southern part of the corded ware came through Bohemia into Middle Germany and then into modern-day Netherlands, and that's where the bell-beaker culture arose, which was, of course, an offshoot of the corded ware. But what about us? What about the Western hunter-gatherers, the Mesolithic Deviants? We managed to secure our position in Scandinavia. So when the corded ware people came into Scandinavia, well, they indeed dominated the region, but around 2600 BC, one of our tribes, the mighty Scandinavian hunter-gatherers, we managed to rise from the eastern Sweden. We managed to rise and fight back. We fought back very hard and managed to reconquer our original lands. We managed to even come across the Baltic Sea into Denmark and totally dominate the corded ware people. So from that day onwards, the dominating haplogroup, male haplogroup among the Proto-Germanic people, already we were Proto-Germanic, is haplogroup I1A. I1A the original Germanic haplogroup from the Western hunter-gatherers of Scandinavia. We've managed to fight back and win. That's why all the later Germanic migrations and invasions of the Iron Age are represented mostly by the lineage of I1A, our people, Mesolithic Deviants of Scandinavia. That's also why Scandinavia is much more individualistic than the rest of Europe. Scandinavia has so many different mental qualities because it lives in the Mesolithic mindset. And I long for the day when Scandinavians rise up again against the foreign people who dominate them today. But alright, but what about the steppe herders of the actual steppe? It seems, according to the latest archaeological finds and archaeogenetics finds, the Yamnaya at one point were also dominated by our people, by the Mesolithic Deviants. In one recent find, it seems that 60% of male lineages in the Baltic, that is Ukrainian steppe, were in fact coming from Mesolithic population. They were the I2A haplogroups, the European hunter-gatherer haplogroup. My people. So it seems that at one point, Mesolithic population of the European hunter-gatherers managed to resist and fight back against the Yamnaya and dominate their women. It is fascinating that we've managed to replace 60% of their haplogroups. But of course, in the result, we actually became Yamnayans because it seems that there was no change in culture. The offspring of these I2A individuals simply were in the Yamnayan society. They were steppe herders and not hunter-gatherers nor farmers. But as I mentioned earlier, Yamnaya did not reach Northern Europe, so they are only significant for the Southern Europe, mostly Balkans. They later, as the catacomb culture, they are responsible for the rise of the Mycenaean Greece, because later Yamnaya, known as the catacomb culture, invaded Balkans around 2000 BC, and that's from where the Mycenaean Greece comes from. Also, Illyrian tribes are descendants of these Yamnayans from the Pontic steppe. So Albanian language comes from Yamnaya, Greek language, and also Armenian language when Yamnayans reached the Caucasus Mountains. So only these three isolated, little-known Indo-European languages, you little-known Greek, yes, come from Yamnaya. But 90% of Indo-European languages come from the forest steppe people who created the corded ware culture in the Northern Europe. And these people, after taking our blonde women and seeding them with their Indo-European seed, they also, a part of them went east through the forests of the Eastern Europe, and they eventually reached the Ural Mountains, and in the south of the Ural Mountains they created the mighty Sintashta culture. They were already mixed, so they had a variety of more northern phenotypes. So the Nordic phenotype from our women was passed into them. And they created the Sintashta culture, that is the Proto-Indo-Iranian culture, which created the war chariot. War chariot with the spoked wheels, a very light vehicle used for warfare. And this vehicle, it quickly spread across the steppe into the Mesopotamia with the first wave of the Indo-Iranian invaders, the Mitanni. The Mitanni and also the Kassites who conquered Babylon. They were from the Proto-Indo-Iranian Sintashta culture, and they came through the steppe. But I don't think we will talk about them because they have nothing to do with Europe, nothing to do with Western hunter-gatherers, our people. So let's forget about them for a while. So what about our people, the Western hunter-gatherers, after all this mishmash, migrations of Indo-Europeans and so on? Well, according to genetic testing today, the greatest contribution from Western hunter-gatherers in modern populations is around the Baltic Sea. That's why I called my podcast Baltic Beats, not some Caribbean rhythms, what gives. Baltic Beats, because today Western hunter-gatherers from the Mesolithic are usually most represented by the Baltic people. So I guess Estonians are the most Western hunter-gatherers today, but also Finns, Swedes, Baltic, that is the Lithuanian and Latvians, and the Poles. And the Danes, of course, yes, we must not forget the Danes. Do you know why Danish girls are the best models? Because of their angular facial features, which is a feature of the Western hunter-gatherer. As if you look at a typical Danish model, you can see she has light features, fair features, but also her jaw is very angular, and that helps modeling. And this angular jaw is a typical Western hunter-gatherer feature. Of course, it is not very helpful for modeling if also you have the upper part of your face, Western hunter-gatherer, that is deep-set eyes and large brow ridges. It's not very helpful, but somehow Danes, the Danish women especially, combine the features of the farmer cocks, that is more delicate features, in the upper part of the skull, with the heavy angular jaw of the Western hunter-gatherer. Western hunter-gatherer jaw is very Chad. In men especially, it is a very Chad jaw. That's why we dominate usually. But unfortunately, Western hunter-gatherers and our genome has one particular flaw, one particular handicap, as the historian Tam Rousel observed and talked about it in one podcast with a Kurdish woman and two Dutch racists. He saw that the people in Britain, the people with the highest alcoholic problems, usually homeless people, they seem to be of the Western hunter-gatherer stock. And I guess this is true, that Western hunter-gatherers are very prone to alcoholism. And with alcoholism come a variety of problems like homelessness, domestic abuse, depression. Yes, the northern people are very prone to depression, and this is a Western hunter-gatherer feature, I guess. We are also quite autistic, so we are prone to depression, autism, to worrying. We have a very warrior-like phenotype, not warrior, but warrior. We have very high dopamine levels, so we are not resistant to stress and stressful situations. Despite our experience in hunting big game, it does not somehow translate into stress resistance. So what would be my advice for lifestyle changes when you are mostly of Western hunter-gatherer stock? Well, you should stop drinking alcohol. I stopped drinking 1 year ago and I still keep my promise because there is no benefit in drinking alcohol. Any amount of alcohol is harmful to you, especially when you are a Western hunter-gatherer. So why don't you just stop using alcohol at any circumstances? For ritualistic purposes, if you are a practicing pagan, you may use small amounts of mead. Mead is a natural form of alcohol, but try to mix it with water to decrease the amount of pure ethanol. But completely cut alcohol from your diet. Don't use it for consumption. I recommend non-alcoholic beer, that is beer which is 100% free from alcohol, because beer contains some very useful substances, so is quite beneficial for your health if it doesn't contain alcohol. And the same goes for wine. If you are more of a wine drinker than beer drinker, you could try to seek out non-alcoholic wine. For health reasons, for health purposes, wine also contains very much beneficial substances. Well, as for eating diet as a Western hunter-gatherer, if you have this genotype, then you should rely on the hunter-gatherer diet. It is the paleo diet, or the primal blueprint as it's called. So cut out grains. Grains make you virgin. Grains make you cock. Our Mesolithic ancestors used to fish a lot, so fishes are always good, especially raw fish in sushi. Yes, you should try sushi. Also dry meat, dry sausages, stuff like this. But you should also try fiber, increase fiber in your diet, because otherwise you may get cancer and die. So if you get rid of alcohol in your life and start eating more like Western hunter-gatherer, then you are practically bound to succeed in life, because you are taller, stronger and more intelligent than Neolithic cocks, and you are individualistic and not tyrannical like the Bronze Age perverts of the Russian steppes. As a Western hunter-gatherer, you are a prime representative of the Western civilization. Western civilization is a civilization built by the Western hunter-gatherers. Remember that. And take care.